Hi, let us have a quick understanding on Apache Sqoop. Within Hadoop ecosystem, we may have huge amount of storage which is served by HDFS. And to have the data into the HDFS, I may bring it in the batch or I may bring it using a stream processing. Using batch, I may bring in the data from any other external sources, for example an RDBMS. I may have huge number of RDBMS which is holding valuable information, and I may want to bring it into the Hadoop ecosystem, or the processed data which is there in the structured form, I may want to take it from HDFS and take it to the RDBMS. And Sqoop is the tool which is going to facilitate to transfer the data between Hadoop ecosystem and RDBMS. So Sqoop acts as a client which is going to connect with any RDBMS using the required informations like host name, port, user ID, password, and the driver information. And that's going to bring the data into the HDFS. Sqoop is a open source project and it is part of Apache Foundation, and it's going to support any JDBC compliant RDBMS. Let us see a quick example on how to use Sqoop with the Cloudera Docker that I have within this system. I am into the Cloudera Docker, which is already having the HDFS. So I do have a number of files. I'm going to use the Sqoop tool. Already Sqoop client is installed and the binaries of Sqoop are added into the path. That is all done by the quick start VM provided by Cloudera. And Cloudera uses a default database. I'm going to log into the default database, MySQL, use the user as root, and password I'll provide it in the console. I'm going to connect locally. I'm going to connect to the RDBMS that is running locally. Let me check what are all database do I have within it. I do have a number of database. By default it gives a sample database retail DB. I do have a number of tables. I'm going to use this customers table to read the data from this RDBMS and bring it into the HDFS. Let us see with an example. I'm going to use the Sqoop command. I can say Sqoop help. That will provide me the options. What are all the options I can use within the Sqoop? So for understanding purpose, we are going to just use a small import and a couple of samples within the Sqoop. Within Sqoop, we do have a command called list databases. That's going to connect to the database and list what are all the database available within it using the Sqoop shell. So I'll provide the command Sqoop list databases, and I'm going to connect to the database using JDBC protocol, and I'm going to connect to the MySQL using the MySQL driver, and it is running locally in the default port 3306. I will be using the username, root, and password I'll provide it in the console, and password by default within the Cloudera Quick Start VM is Cloudera. I do have the result. I am able to see what are all the databases available. Now let me check what are all the tables available within this database retail_db. I'm going to provide the command Sqoop list-tables. That's going to list all the tables within the database retail_db by connecting to the database running in this particular host and port using the username as root, and password I am providing it in the command itself as Cloudera, so that it doesn't prompt directly. It will make the connection and it's going to list the tables available within it. Now I am going to use the Sqoop import command to connect to the database and import it within the HDFS location. Let me go ahead and do that. Sqoop import. I'm going to connect to the database using the JDBC protocol and MySQL driver, where the host and the port and what database and what table I want to connect with, and the username, password I am providing, and within the HDFS where it should list and how many map tasks should run to bring in this particular data. In case if I don't have primary key for the table, I may need to provide based on what column it should bring it in, or by default it will be running with 4 map tasks, and that should be taken care by the developers of Sqoop. Let's see with an example whether it's able to import. So it's going to collect all the data from this specific table and bring it into the HDFS in this location that we have defined, and that will be leveraged by a MapReduce task. So that's the biggest advantage of Sqoop than any other ETL tool. You may have a very important question over here. What big difference Sqoop going to bring in than any other ETL tools? ETL tools, it's going to run in a single system, but Sqoop going to leverage the MapReduce task, so it can run n number of map tasks, n number of reduce tasks, and it can bring the data and that's going to leverage the parallelism as well as horizontal scalability. As we had instructed to run it with a single map task, it ran one map task. In case if my database is capable enough to establish multiple connections, I can make multiple map tasks to run. So it imported around 12,435 records. Let's check the HDFS location. I'm able to see a file, and that is part of a part file. As we ran only one map task, only one part file got created. In case we wanted to see some details about it, I do have some customer information, and that got imported into the HDFS. So we have satisfied the requirement of bringing the data from RDBMS into the HDFS location using the Sqoop. The same folder data can be exported back into the RDBMS as well. I do have a sample database created. Let me log in and quickly show. So I have a database, retail_db_export, and within that I have a table called customers. I don't have any records now. I'm going to export the data which is available within the HDFS location into this specific table. Let me go ahead and try. So I'm going to provide the location where the data is available as a HDFS path, and I'll provide the command export. Sqoop export where I should connect to, where the database is running, that is the database called retail_db_export. And the table where it has to export the data into is customers and username password, and from where it should export the data. Export dir, I'm providing the location, and by default Sqoop import and export runs with the 4 map tasks. If I doesn't provide explicitly how many map tasks to run, by default it will be running with the 4 map tasks. You see over here, I did not mention explicitly how many tasks to run, so it launched 4 map tasks and it exported 12,435 records into the database by reading the data available from the HDFS location. We have satisfied the other requirement as well of reading the data from the HDFS location and inserting it into the RDBMS. And Sqoop can work only to transfer the data between RDBMS and Hadoop ecosystem, and the data within the Hadoop ecosystem should be in structured form. Let me log into this same database and check whether I do have the records. I'm going to check how many records are available within the customers table. I do have. So we are able to see the demo of list the tables available within an RDBMS or list the database available within an RDBMS, as well as do a demo on import and export. And Sqoop plays a very important role to bring in the data into the Hadoop ecosystem, and in the layer of data ingestion it plays a very significant role to bring in the structured data.